Well, jeepers! You're listening to Smash or Pass.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode on the JayBee and Milly channel. I am JayBee and joining me of course is Milly.
Hi.
And the very special guest that we'll be interviewing today is the incredible director, producer and writer, Mr. Brian Levant.
How you doing, guys?
The thing is, we've been, admiring your filmography for such a big amount of time, and with you being a director, producer and a writer, I'm curious to know, did you always want to go into being a director, or did kind of the writing lead into the producing and vice versa?
Well, I was a true child of TV, born in 1952, just when coast to coast television in the United States began, and I was tremendously influenced by it. There was a succession of early children's shows that dominated my imagination, as well as most kids of the era, and they were heavily commercialized, and that was cross-pollinated. So if you watched Howdy Doody, then you were likely to buy one of the 3,000 licensed products that the show had in its early days, and more as it went on. It was a $2 billion industry, and they had tie-ins with every food company. And the line was blurred between entertainment and commercialism. In the middle of a thing, they'd pick up a loaf of Wonder Bread and tell mom that Wonder Bread, builds bodies 8 ways, and that you want it for breakfast tomorrow, okay? And you did, and you followed the path that you were led on, and identified with the advertising icons that supported these programs, and that's the basis of a relationship that grew into collecting. But I submitted my first jokes to local kids shows in Chicago when I was 8 years old. I writing skits for Cub Scouts then. Third grade actually turned out to be a huge, looking back at it, not only did I start writing in earnest, but that was also the year that I watched the premiere of the Flintstones. and you have no idea, watching the premiere of the Flintstones, that one day you're going to be the mayor of Bedrock for 2 terms. And watching the Andy Griffith Show that debuted in 1960, you have no idea that one day that you would be working beside and do your first feature film for Ron Howard's company. And that, watching the first episode of the Dick Van Dyke Show, how could you have any concept that you would be working beside two of the key players in the production of that series, and know many others. and you go back a little further, when I'm in kindergarten and watch the premiere of Leave It to Beaver, how could you ever imagine that 25 years later I would be running the show? It's all seems very intertwined, and thus intertwined with my collecting, because I don't know if it's intentional or accidental that everything I have worked on almost, has board games and lunch boxes and action figures and Christmas tree flocking and God knows what else. And so I'm very happy to be able to combine all of those things, the rich history of my collection and a half a century of work, and I'll be honest, in the highest levels of the entertainment industry, and I've kind of put it in the blender, and we end up with my book, My Life in Toys, which I've been working on for 11 years and is finally out and selling very nicely. Thank you.
Oh well, it's amazing, and we're looking forward to hearing more about that. And as well, just from looking at the backdrop behind you, you've got an incredible collection of things there as well. But
Oh,
I guess
this is just the office.
I mean, it all looks incredible. And like you say, you were inspired from such a young age to be submitting jokes and things like that from, 8 years old. So was it, at the time, in particular, like comedy shows that inspired you, or were there
Well,
ever any
you know,
jokes that you wanted to have with a
no,
certain show or anything?
well, I was very cognizant of the fact that we watched a tremendous amount of television in my house. And in prime time, you look at the shows that we watched, and we watched You Bet Your Life with Groucho Marx. We watched Bob Hope. We watched Jack Benny. We watched Jackie Gleason. We watched Red Skelton. You watched masters at work weekly in your living room for the first time in the history of the world. And later I would, work with people who wrote for these people. And and but it was a clinic there. But when you're a kid, especially in Chicago where it's very cold in the winter, and if you go out ice skating for a little bit, but the rest of the time you're hunkered down in the basement with a cup of cocoa and a variety of TV offerings. Primarily, what I always remember is the independent station. There were the major networks. This was before cable, before streaming, before the internet, and so local stations put on their own shows, and the cheapest shows to make, of course, were news shows where someone sat in front of a background and they fed him stuff that came off the wire. In those days, they literally had telegraphs feeding information worldwide. And so the only other thing that's as cheap is a man sitting in a chair with one arm behind a puppet stage, operating a puppet, and I'll do it in frame, a good director that I am, and talking to each other. And boy, that's a cheap show. There was a show called The Glovables. They didn't even bother to make nice marionettes or hand puppets. They would just, paint eyes on gloves and go like this, but this, so you watch those shows intermixed in the mid 50s. Suddenly the studios discovered that television was here to stay. And they, for instance, in 1956, they dumped all the Popeye theatrical cartoons into that market. And they dropped on 58, what is it? 283 Three Stooges, one reelers, and that kind of ilk, and the serials like Flash Gordon and stuff. And so you would have the puppets, and they would talk for 5 minutes, and they, hey, now let's see what's happening with the Three Stooges. And they'd show a Three Stooges short and come back and do a little more and sell some more. But so your afternoons were divided between these really rough and tough, so Looney Tunes, right? Looney Tunes and even the earlier stuff. Not so much the Mickey Mouse Club, but Farmer Brown and Mighty Mouse, Terry Tunes. They were very they had a big presence on TV in those days. And anyways, the thing is that there was also a mix, not just of with the slapstick and the wild humor and stuff. There was also intermixed with that was these very kind of softer shows like Lassie and Leave It to Beaver and Ozzie and Harriet. And if you look at the work of the Chicago filmmakers of my generation, Robert Zemeckis, John Hughes, what's Ghostbusters guy? Sorry, I can't
Ivan
remember.
Reitman?
No. The writer and the actor who directed he directed the next one. Anyway, I'm sorry. But anyways, you'll see this kind of mix of pathos and wild comedy. And I really believe it stems from that mixture within the entertainment that we absorbed as kids sitting in our basements trying to keep warm.
Oh, well, that is just so interesting. And again, I guess one of the main reasons why we reached out to you is to talk about the new book that you launched as well, My Life and Toys. And, we've gone into some of your writing work in terms of, IMDb, we've watched a lot of the films. And so I'm curious to know, with writing for so much in your career about, I guess, other people and what other characters are going through, what was it like to make the shift between, writing about yourself and your own experiences?
Well, one of the reasons it took 11 years is because I had never written in my own voice. I mean, things that I had written like for funerals were about other people, not about me and my experiences. And it took a long time and hundreds of drafts of things before I found kind of what I sound like. And actually, I said something to this effect. We had a book signing on the Sunset Strip last week, and I said something like that. And afterwards, a friend of mine who's worked with me a lot, Bennett Yellen, one of the with the Fairley brothers, did Dumb and Dumber and things like that. He said, "I got news for you. You sound just like you sound." So I guess I kind of went around like Dorothy going to Oz when it was all there to begin with. Just plug myself in. But no, that writing a book is one thing. Designing a book is another. Designing and writing a book when you've never done anything remotely like that. Although I can compare it favorably to editing. So I don't, we no longer cut film, but I worked in the days where we still physically cut film, sadly enough. But the process of editing a film and designing a book were very similar. I didn't have much of a plan going in. We shot over 7,000 photographs total, which over 1,300 are in the book. And I'm very fortunate that my partner in this, Joe Pellegrini, is also my brother-in-law, and he's also one of the top commercial photographers in the United States, who does nothing but shoot products, sweaty Coke bottles and bowls of cereal and every Subway sandwich you've seen in a store, billboard, magazine. He has shot for the past 16 years. And he has brought that same kind of skill and lighting technique to my collection. And I really kind of gave him free rein to shoot close-ups. I wanted everything wide, like you make a movie. Let's get it wide and then we'll get the close-ups. But I let him use his eye to discern how to shoot the close-ups. And the book is a beautiful mix of the two. I think that one of the things that was important to me was the lesson I learned from a book called A Celebration of Comic Toys and Collectibles, which was a book published in 1975 by a very, very influential and amazing collector by the name of Robert Lesser, who eventually in the early in the 21st century started selling off his amazing collection of Japanese robots, of comic book toys. But his whole campaign, his whole life, and he had several museum exhibitions, was to treat comic art and memorabilia as art. It is drawn from art. It is, it's like Roy Lichtenstein painting a Picasso in his own style. When a Japanese toy maker who'd never seen the Flintstones in color did their version of a Flintstones for a toy in 1962. And we all, I think, can appreciate sometimes the beauty and the survival instincts of very, very old toys. When you see, things from the 1800s, incredible animation and music, and oh my God, how did they do those things? And then you get into the mass production that the 20th century brought, particularly from the 1910s into the 1950s, with wind-up toys, mass-produced, and with a huge variety and a tremendous amount of licensing that began really in earnest. There were always products for the very earliest of cartoons, the Toonerville Trolley, the Yellow Oliphant's Yellow Kid, even a little bit for Crazy Cat, one of the great influential comic strips of the early 20th century. But until Disney really got into it, into marketing it and selling off licenses for things like the first Mickey Mouse watch, which during the Depression cost $2.98, which was an absolute fortune in those days, but they sold gazillions of them. And so anyways, to get back to how that affects the book, we want to look at all these objects with a different lens, not just as playthings, but as significant evidence of culture.
I mean, collecting in itself is an incredible journey to, go back and see these things and kind of piece them all together through time. And, certainly, throughout Scooby, our collections, items date back so far. But writing this book in itself has been a journey as well, over the last 11 years. So is there a certain part of the book that you enjoyed writing the most, or a certain element of writing?
Well, like I said, I spent a couple of years basically on Zoom with people during the pandemic. The pandemic was great for allowing me the time to finish the book. But to know that you're gonna get on a Zoom in the morning, and you're gonna try and create excitement from still photographs. That's as a director, my motto is always try and bring everything to a boil. Get the most you can out of that. Energize it, take it to another level, and make it cook. And try to do the same thing with every page, to make it not predictable, to make it interesting, to give you a very, very primal view of things that characters familiar, unfamiliar, and things that are shiny, and things that have been worn by time and affection.
I mean, I think collecting, I don't know, like the way that you speak about it, I think this is the first time that, because we've kind of just, done the whole collecting thing as a hobby, and speaking to you and hearing how you speak about it is like, it's like talking, to the master. And so to that end, I'm sure that there's, helpful tips and everything in the book. But in terms of like your initial
there's no
response-
helpful tips in the book. There are no helpful tips. There are no captions, because I don't care who made something, what year it came out. I'm looking at it through a very different lens. But collecting, as we say in the book, is a way of sharing common memories. It shows it displays your passion and your individuality. It's a badge you wear of who you are, and you shouldn't be ashamed that badge says Scooby Doo. But you have more than Scooby. What's that on the side there? What's that behind you?
Oh,
Yeah. Point with your right hand.
my right hand.
Go straight up. Yes. What are those?
These
I
are
wanna
little
explain them.
U2's figures. They're of like UK YouTubers, and they're like limited figures from this site called U2's. It's like a whole funhouse.
Yeah,
Really.
I got it. Okay, somebody got a smart license there. and they
Oh
and
yeah.
there's millions of them, huh? Okay, see, that should have gone into the toy business.
Oh
I
my god.
planned on it once. I actually made
Oh.
designs, and then I found out what it cost to make one.
I mean,
And I'd
it's
much
so
rather spend that
crazy.
on the book.
No, I mean, like, it's just crazy, and I absolutely love what you said there, that it's an expression of yourself, it's a badge of who you are, and I mean, to that end, so when you went into collecting, one of the things that we were really admiring from the front cover of the book and the previews, and of course on your Instagram, is your absolutely humongous Flintstones collection. So would your journey into collecting start from, this looks like a really cool item, I want to see what else is in that line, or as you say, would it be, I love the
Well,
Flintstones, so I'm
it
gonna
really,
collect
you know,
Flintstones?
I was obsessive about the toys that I wanted as a kid, and I
Mm.
did collect comic books and to a lesser degree sports cards. Uh, uh, but it wasn't really until till my wife moved in with me, and she brought with her a pair of salt and pepper shakers uh, that a friend had given her that had been part of Andy Warhol's salt and pepper shaker collection. He had a gazillion of them, and along with warehouses full of other things. And he did a big sell-off in the mid '70s, and so we got those, and we thought, well, that's pretty cool. We don't have much to do, so we started going to flea markets and stuff, and there were always salt and pepper shakers. And pretty soon we had to build a giant shelf for it. So soon enough, you come out, hey, there's Mr. Peanut salt and pepper shake. Hey, there's the cool cigarette penguins, and pretty soon you're collecting that, and then you see Robert Lesser's book, and you say, "Oh my God, Popeye! That's what were they looking for?" And that's the Ark of the Covenant of collecting. This is it started in 1927. They did everything before everybody, and I started collecting Popeye, and eventually I started collecting little Flintstones, and when I was lucky enough to be asked uh, to meet with Steven Spielberg and Kathy Kennedy uh, about directing the Flintstones as a feature film. I took a Polaroid. That's how long ago this was. I took a Polaroid of my Flintstones collection, which was, I would say, I don't know, 25 to 40 pieces. I couldn't even say. I don't. I wish I had the picture. I
Mm.
certainly would have loved to put it in the book. uh, but my first 10 minutes of the meeting, I talk like this, and strangely enough, they seem to be used to people talking to them like that. But I pulled myself together, and finally, I pulled the Polaroid out of my pocket and handed it to Steven, and suddenly I saw him light up. I think he saw, regardless of my abilities, I think he saw somebody who appreciated the Flintstones on a different level. That was a cute show.
Yeah.
And as I became more and more immersed in the Flintstones, I went on a buying spree. That's the only, I mean, everywhere we went, there seemed to be more and more, and before eBay, there was Toy Shop magazine in the United States, and that was the Bible, and you just scour it for. You didn't have internet auctions. I mean, it was a very different collecting sphere. Today, now, you want something that you've always wanted your whole life, you can find it. It's sad, but you can find it.
Yeah.
The hunt is gone, and I wasn't much of a hunter, but I was a gatherer. And when I'd see them, I'd gather, where regardless of condition, or if it was a good toy, a bad toy. It was just at one point, especially with the Flintstones, it was just about quantity. We've settled down quite a bit, and go for the most interesting, visually appealing ones now.
I mean, it sounds like the Flintstones is something that's always been, quite close to your heart. So what was it like you say, after that initial meeting to then begin working and to direct the live action adaptation of the Flintstones?
Well, it was the greatest creative challenge of my life. I ran point along with an incredible art department, and my, you know, um, my producers on the film were making their first film as producers, Bruce Cohn and Colin Wilson. Today, as I say in the book, 20 years after the Flintstones, they both had Best Picture Oscars on their mantles, and I was still doing adaptations of Hanna-Barbera's work. And we had Industrial Light and Magic did our visual effects, and Jim Henson's London Creature Shop designed and built and performed all the characters, and our physical effects, the special effects unit was led by Michael Lantieri, who won the Oscar the previous year for Jurassic Park, and our director of photography was Dean Cundy, the man who had reinvented special effects photography for the Back to the Future trilogy, and had shot Jurassic Park as well. So it was very early in CGI, but my job was to kind of funnel the design ethos down to our hundreds of employees, and create a very unified world where everything looked like it belonged and everything was interesting, that we drew from the Flintstones 1960. That's very kind of space age interiors, different shapes and colors and stuff, and we hewed very much to the era in design. But every one of these 6,000 props, wardrobe, everything, including the kitchen sink, for God's sakes, had to be designed and built. And so I was at the top of the design chain, and tried to put my mark and make interesting every one of those things and make it true to the Flintstones, but exceptional in concept. I think, if you look at the cars we built beyond the Fred Flivver and Barney's pencil car, that we call it because it's sharpened on the front. Who would make a car like that? You got to wonder, But if you look at the vehicles we did, and the signage, and every joke, on the ice cream truck it says new flavor, vanilla. On the Rock Donalds were over 12 dozen served. Bedrock, first with fire, in every piece of signage, everything you saw in the Flintstones freezer, everything you saw on their shelves, the bookcases, the newspapers in town, the helmets at the quarry, every outfit, every pickaxe had to be designed, and in many cases practical.
Wow, well, it's certainly something that does stand out across the movie, is that, Bedrock really was brought to life. And it's something that we still value so much, because quite often when you watch a movie now, a lot of it will be done with a green screen behind. Whereas with this, it was really built from the ground up. So do you remember what it was like to be on set and kind of almost stand in Bedrock kind of thing?
Yeah, it was awe-inspiring. And everybody in town came out to the quarry or to Vasquez Rocks just to see it. And what you said about a green screen is so true. Today, you would not make this movie that way. 10 years later, you wouldn't have made this movie that way. But we did, both of them, and they were real, and the sets were enormous, and stone and crystal, and you felt that. You're all fake fur. But but it was tactile, I mean, I watch a Marvel movie with a fight scene and people are going through buildings. I know they didn't do that. It was just, it felt it. It felt it. I hope it still comes across. Our kids are so used to not believing something that maybe they think that that's how we did it. Now, we'll find out soon.
I mean, I'll never forget, like you're saying, using Marvel as the example, like there's a big fight scene when in fact only one person was actually on the set and there was about 1,000 on the screen. And that in itself kind of was baffling to me because I really appreciate, like you say, the realness that was with the Flintstone movies. So do you have any favorite memories from working on that?
Well, yes, actually. I think that number one, the fact that I enjoyed Steven Spielberg's approval and support throughout both films is still tremendously satisfying, as was getting to know and work with Bill Hanna and Joe Barbera. And, I tell the story often about how I first met them. They kept the script away from them for a long time. They didn't want them ambling. They didn't want them to meddle or be unhappy with it, until everybody was on board, and the train had kind of left that station. And I don't know why they chose to do that, but they did. And so the first time they had any real interaction with the production was the design phase was basically complete, and we were in a serious building mode. And the only car that was finished was Barney's double log car with the. And the cartoon, it's a single. To get more people in, we had to make it 2 logs. And that was the only car that was done. And I picked them up and they got in the car with me. And I'm driving them across to stage 17, 18, 19, 21, and 22. We're all filled. That's about close to 200,000 square feet of soundstage that we had occupied just in our building phase. And they were, Bill and Joe were very quiet, and I felt that they expected to be disappointed. And once we walked inside and they saw what we were building, they started giving each other these old married couple looks, and they were engaged and fascinated and delighted, as was every single person working on those stages. That Hanna-Barbera is, they really weren't people. They were an institution in our lives, and the fact that they were there and were so blown away by what these people were doing in their name, with the crown jewel of their empire, meant so much. And we finally walked out back into the sunlight, and Joe Barbera shook his head and he said, "Never did I ever expect to see anything like that." And I told him we were just getting started, and we were. And they were in the movie, and they came. I ran the film for them. Finally, the finished film. They came with Hoyt Curtin, their composer who wrote the Flintstones theme, and not Scooby Doo though, for some reason I've noticed, but just the Jetsons, just about all of them. And when the film ended, there were tears in their eyes, and they gave me big hugs. And what more could you ask for,
Wow, that just seems like such an amazing memory. Thank you so much for sharing that. It just sounds like almost a dream come true for everyone involved in it. And definitely when you just sit there and you just enjoy it, right? You can definitely just feel the kind of
not that it wasn't a horrible amount of work, and the pressure. I mean, the pressure put a dent in my blood pressure for decades. But so creatively rewarding and then financially rewarding. And the second one was equally creatively rewarding and financially a bomb.
Well, here's the thing. One thing that I did research. It's a bit of a curiosity about. I think this is more for the first film than Viva Rock Vegas, but they did quite a number of toys to go along with the first movie. Very
Yes.
interesting how they almost fused Hanna-Barbera Fred Flintstone with John Goodman's Fred Flintstone. But with your kind of background as a collector, of course, maybe less so then. Did you have any input into the merchandise that was produced to
Well,
release at the time?
all right. So what we would do was I brought my entire collection into Amblin. We set it up in in uh, in the screening room, and I would do presentations for Post and Mattel and McDonald's and the people who built the model cars and all the different toy lines, coloring books, cookies. What else we got back there? PVCs, books, watches, party favors.
Oh, that is amazing. I remember one of my favorite Flintstones items that I had growing up was an alarm clock, and it screamed Wilma or like something like that, and you have to like push in the stone bowling pin.
I got one of those in the garage.
Ooh, I need to find that at some stage because I knackered it. I woke up to it
Overused.
every day, and it's just
Yeah, no, but that's just it. It lent to creativity,
Mhm.
you know, and I think that's a difference between the Flintstones and the Jetsons. The Jetsons, and today we are the Jetsons. We have boy bands, big flat screens. We sit at desks, competing operating systems, Roombas. We are the Jetsons. But there is a limited, if you look at every Jetsons product is the same. It's the family in a flying saucer, right? There's nothing else. I'm sorry. There's nothing else. Maybe one or two, the rubber ones in their apartment, but that's all they had. The Flintstones had this endless world of cooperation between man and animal and translating the 20th century objects into a comedic Stonehenge Rube Goldbergy world. That is the constant delight of the Flintstones. And the Jetsons only lasted 1 year, remember? Although they did it in the 80s, they came back with the original cast, mind you, who are old in the 60s. And they did another season. It was a nice encore. But now, there's I guess there's a new Pebbles series coming to America, Bedrock. I'm not holding my breath. I did mine. A lot of other people do theirs, and the same thing with Scooby Doo. That how many years after that? Like 15 years after the Flintstones. A lot of things weren't happening that were supposed to happen. You gotta deal with the studio that goes out of business, that kind of thing. And I heard that they wanted to do a 2-hour Scooby Doo live action feature for the Cartoon Network that would lead into a series. And I said, why not? Now, now I was first approached. I know you'd asked, but I had been approached for the first film, the feature. And Chuck Roven, the producer, produced the Batman movies with Christopher Nolan and stuff. We were neighbors. We did one project together, and so we knew each other. And they brought me in, and they showed me the script, which was still a remnant of Mike Myers. And what I saw was a story, and it was much, it was about people who broke up because they disliked each other. They couldn't get along. And I had already done things like reviving Leave It to Beaver, which was all about playing on people's memories of the togetherness of the group. And so to me, it was antithetical to say that these people even, no longer worked together. They didn't like, there was something. Who wants to see that from them? And then I thought they were treading on some iffy ground for a family film with harvesting the souls of children. That's the kind of thing that, in my experience with test audiences, they didn't like. Things. No, you're not. No, I'm not getting up again.
Yeah, and I mean, like you say, with the original one, test audiences, there did go on to be a lot of changes from
Yeah.
what was originally filmed, what was
No,
originally proposed.
Yes, no, and it should be noted that Kent Beta, who edited both Scooby Doo features, and David Newman also performed those duties on the Flintstones and many other films of mine. And David did this my Scooby Doo films. But anyways, I said in the middle of the meeting with Chuck Roven, I said, couldn't they just all be at college, and couldn't they just, meet on a ride board at spring vacation? The only way to get to Fort Myers or Daytona Beach, or spring vacation, is they end up in a van with a crazy hippie and his nutty dog, and they happenstance upon something that happens, and they bond and become a team. And he goes, can't you wrap your head around what's there? And I said, no, I don't feel it. And so when I heard that what they wanted to do, this is a decade later, is go back and do how they met. And even though this was high school and I was thinking a little older, I said, great, that's for me. That's for me.
It's a lot more of like a union.
Yeah, and what we did was have 4 kids who didn't know each other and even rode the same bus from different social, athletic, God knows what Shaggy was into, but to have them come together, come into play with supernatural forces, and in order to clear their names, like in a Hitchcock movie, they have to work together to solve a mystery and become a team. And I loved that, and I loved working with Steve and Dan Altier, who did such wonderful and work, and no matter how many different crazy ideas I came up with, they never said, "What are you? Enough! Stop! We're happy with this script." And we kept pushing ourselves to make it better and better, and it was a very difficult assignment. The feature films, I believe the first one cost $85 million. I think the second one cost about 40 million, rather, more than that. We made ours for $7.5 million, both of them. Right, and it was tough. It was very tough. We had to shoot very fast, but I had, luckily, I had great kids. Robbie Amell, Haley Kayoko, Nick Pilatus, Kate Melton. I mean, they ran the gamut. 15 years old. Robbie was the oldest at 20. They had very limited experience, but they worked so hard, and they were so good, and they were so energetic. It was seriously, for somebody who'd been mashed around for show business for a long time, it was a joy to be with people who were at the beginning of their careers, and for the first time were allowed, free range to show their talents, and they loved the challenge, and every day was great with these kids. And I'm so sorry we didn't do more. We shot the first movie, Mystery Begins, the highest rated thing ever in the history of the Cartoon Network, but we never made a series because Warner Brothers, in their wisdom, had made a budget for a series in which they felt that every episode could be made for probably what it would cost to do Scooby Doo alone. So, and still out of that train wreck, we did Curse of the Lake Monster, which I loved and got to work with not only those kids, but my old Happy Days friends, Marion Ross and Ted McGinley. And we shot that one in LA. It was the first time I'd worked in Los Angeles in over a decade, and got to work with people like Dean Cundy again, who also, collects animation art. So he loved being a part of the Flintstones and Scooby Doo on that level, and we had a great time, and we developed 2 more scripts. One by Nat Malden, terrific writer and the son of a noted comic strip artist and political cartoonist Bill Malden, and which had the group battling creatures from Irish folklore, all kinds of things that I never knew existed, but were a lot of fun. And then the Altier brothers and I came up with a story that I'm still sick has never found the screen or another format, which is, let me see if I can say this right, Scooby-Doo's zany time-traveling Christmas adventure in Laugh-O-Rama, in which the Mystery Inc. gang travel back in time to the 1890s to stop a plot by the Druids to eliminate Christmas, and in the process, Velma would begin a love affair with the author of The Time Machine, and H.G. Wells, who in this actually invented a time machine, and it would ultimately change the fortunes of 2 of the members of Mr. Inc.'s future family. And it was imaginative. We scouted it. We were going to shoot it all Victorian England, except for the beginning and end. We were going to shoot it up in the old part of Montreal, where they also had generous blue screen credits, green screen credits, because we needed a lot of that kind of stuff too. And it was just the finale, which is a showdown with the Druids in Stonehenge. Remember, it was the Druids who presumably built Stonehenge, where Daphne is being sacrificed. I'm going to find a way to. I've talked a couple of times to people at Warner's about doing the movie as a Scooby Doo comic book. And maybe we can do that. It's just too good a story, and it's not anything that the animation people would do, because there's no WWF people in it, or Batman and Robin.
Oh gosh, well, like you say, the mystery begins because of the Lake Monster was such great projects, and like you say, just the people in them as well. I know we've had the pleasure of speaking to Kate and Nick, and they still reflect really fondly on their time working on those projects. So going into Scooby, was it something you were excited about? Was it one of the cartoons that you were familiar with from when you were younger?
This is the funny thing about Scooby Doo and I. When Scooby Doo premiered, what, 68 or 69?
69, yeah, 69.
Okay, 69. I was a senior in high school. I had a car. I had a girlfriend. I was in a basketball league on Saturday mornings. I didn't watch as much Saturday morning TV in those days as I did even 5 years before. And so I personally liked Scooby, didn't love Scooby. I found that their reliance on the same gimmick every week was not satisfying to me. That yes, and I love doing, and if you see pulling the mask off, right? the big moment in every Scooby Doo. And if we did a whole montage of them in Mystery Begins just for fun in a musical number. But the template that we worked out for the films that I was involved in was different. And that was that we wanted to have real supernatural forces. Right. To me, that's the real fun is having a graveyard empty and wreak havoc throughout Coolsville because Shaggy read the wrong incantation. That's not going to happen in the cartoon. But so our template that the Altiers kind of came up with, and we said, yeah, that's it, is real supernatural forces controlled by a human. So and that's the way we made it work in all the films that we worked on, and it allowed us a much wider spectrum of horror. Let's use the horror, mystery, creatures, whatever you want to call it. I mean, the creature in Lake Monster is a far cry from the creatures in the cartoon. I mean, that's a scary. I was very happy because oh my God, I'm making a monster movie. I never made a monster movie. But we were so clever. There's one shot, one close up where the lake monster turns and it goes like that. And we must use it 20 times. We'd blow it up. We'd flip it so he's looking, it turns the other way, wider, closer.
It's safe to say you perfected the villains, and it was so refreshing to see a supernatural element to it, because quite often Warner Brothers and Hanna-Barbera and everything could be quite strict with to what extent supernatural can exist within things. But in terms of writing for the gang itself, was there ever, a favourite character you had to write for, or even just watching them back, a favourite character to see?
In Scooby?
Yeah,
well,
in Scooby.
Let me tell you this much, that when I had my first meeting, suddenly I couldn't remember Daphne's name. So I had to dodge around that. And the redhead, is she redhead or blonde? Yeah, the redhead. But I think that the relationship between Shaggy and Scooby is really, really the key to it. And the Altiers had a very interesting concept, and that is that Shaggy is the only one who hears Scooby. Nobody else can actually hear him. So, and that made sense to me, and it bonds them in a way that you couldn't bond with the others. And it's just so funny when Nick Pilatus walked into the office. I said, he's got it. I mean, my God, I've never seen anybody who so epitomized the build of a cartoon character. I mean, he was young and he was kind of loosely limbered and stuff. And luckily for us, he's tremendously hairy. So growing a great goatee was no. As a matter of fact, we had to shave his arms to make him look younger.
Oh, it's just incredible. Like, to speak more to that, just so glad that Nick Pilatus ended up becoming the Shaggy of those movies, because honestly, like, with there being so many Shaggys, even after all these years, he's up there as like a contender. Like, I almost wish that like there was a universe where you could have multiple Shaggys and Nick could still be kind of in that role, because he was just so good in that.
Well, there were multiple Shaggies in Scooby Doo's zany time traveling Christmas adventure in Laugh-O-Rama.
Oh, that would have been so fun. But I guess I can still remember watching The Mystery Begins for the first time. Such a fun film. I mean, do you have any favorite memories from the set of that movie?
Well, my worst memory is I had to cut our best scene in order to be able to afford the rest of them. When they were escaping from searching the house, where the specter finally catches them and knocks them out, and they wake up in the gym. That's not the way that happened. They got back into the van and they're rolling down a curving road. We had the curving, believe it or not, the curving road that led to that house, all downhill, being chased by ghosts, and then the ghosts opening the back of the van and pulling Shaggy out. And they're going up on two wheels, and Daphne and Velma are holding Shaggy's arms, and the ghosts are trying to pull him out, and finally they lose, and they wake up in the gym. But that was a very exciting scene, and kind of a horror movie scene, but we didn't get to shoot it because I had to make a decision. Do I do this and lose 3 or 4 other things, or do I lose this and I knock them out, they wake up in the gym, which is where we're going anyways?
Yeah.
Which is an unfortunate decision, but when you're dealing with limited money, and let's face it, no matter how much money you have, I'm sure James Cameron said, "Oh, I don't have enough money on Avatar." Yeah. But for everybody, it's tough, and it's especially tough when you are trying to be as ambitious as we were with those with those films.
That sounded like such an exciting scene. I mean, I'd have loved to have seen it, but we're also aware of a deleted scene in the second one as well, which was where Jonathan Winters was at Frickett Farm. Do you remember anything about that scene, or if the footage?
Everything about it. Jonathan Winters. When the year I produced the final season of Mork and Mindy that I produced, Jonathan Winters, who'd been on the show previously and was Robin Williams' comic hero, he really created, he didn't create improv, but what he created was the ability to be a wellspring of characters and move in between them in the course of a performance. And he was committed at one point in his life. And so on the 4th season of Mork and Mindy, he played Mork and Mindy's child. He hatched from a giant egg that Mork had laid and grew, and on Orku aged backwards. The elder, who'd made several appearances early on, was about 6. And so we forged a pretty good relationship there. Who's also appeared in the Flintstones in a small part, and I was very happy that the Altiers had put in what the farmer's name is, Frick. Is that it?
Fricker. It's like a reference to
All
an
right,
episode
so
of the new
Maud
Scooby Doo
Fricker. Maud Fricker used to be Jonathan's old lady character. So this was like the husband, and it was a character that he created in the original Scooby Doo cartoon. And so we burned down the barn, and of course there was one line for John. We were there for 2.5 hours with him going. I went up to his dressing room when I heard he'd arrived, and just, "Hey Johnny, how you doing? How am I doing? How am I doing? I'm ready for the big dirt nap. That's how I'm doing. I feel like shit." But like many performers, when he found the crew, his audience, people who idolized him and were just so thrilled to breathe the same air, he was revitalized. And finally his son, who had accompanied him, had to drag him off. I think he made one other appearance, and that was it. And so when Warner Brothers saw the film, they said, the beginning drags a little bit. And it did, because we had allowed Jonathan's part to expand beyond the one line. Who's supposed to pay for my barn? And I felt terrible about it, and I couldn't come up with a way to keep it until, I hate myself for things like this, walked off of the dubbing stage where we finished the sound, meaning there's nothing more I can do on this movie. And I figured out how to keep him in. But
Oh, that's such a shame. I'd love to see like the footage of that, perhaps on like a bonus feature of like a 20th anniversary
I'll
special.
send you a picture of me and Jonathan and the Altiers. We all look very happy.
Oh gosh, it does sound like that would have been so much fun to have in the movie. And at least there's still the references for it, throughout, so we can pick up on the fact that they would have been there. And going into that second movie, with the success of the first movie and everything, do you feel like you got more creative freedom to do what you wanted with this movie?
No, I had complete creative freedom. It was only our ability to pay for it that was in question. I've been very lucky that, I always work with studios, with strong producers. Most of the producers I've ever worked with are also directors. Chris Columbus, Gary Marshall, Steven Spielberg, Ice Cube, Ivan Reitman, and I have been able to use them as shields from meddling by the higher ups. And at the same time, we've always been given room to do and create as I hope to. And when people had something good to say, a good idea, I'm happy to jump on it. But Kathy Kennedy once said something to me that I've never forgotten. She said, "You don't take notes from somebody who doesn't like your movie."
That seems like quite a good philosophy, to kind of just keep
Well,
on
sometimes it's not
that
always
way.
possible.
Mm.
That's why. What's that Jennifer Garner movie? 13 Going on 30. I always love. It says on the DVD box. It says with 18 deleted scenes. I think 18 deleted scenes. 18. Did nobody know what they were shooting going into this?
Oh gosh, there's just so many like curiosities that you can delve into with like the types of situations where someone has meddled with a film. It's so interesting, and of course we've kind of gone into this. You've told everyone what they could have expected from that third installment after the Lake Monster, but from the point of view of having it almost go into fruition, like you say, you scouted locations. Was that intended to be a direct follow-up to Curse of the Lake Monster in that it would be the same cast and
Oh yeah,
kind of
same group, same. Oh, I would have ridden that horse until the legs fell off. Truly, I love those kids, and they're not kids anymore, and two of them are very big stars. Um, and I remember Haley Kayoko showing me, her little YouTube videos, her sitting in her bedroom playing her acoustic guitar, and now she's got a Grammy, and
Oh gosh.
and Robbie, Robbie's career has been sensational, as is his wife's. They got a beautiful kid. Kate has a beautiful little boy. Nick has children, and been is married to the girl he was with when we did those movies back in 2009, 2010, something like that. Yeah, so they've built very nice lives for themselves, and I'm very proud of them. And I hope they'll all speak at my funeral. That's.
I mean, honestly, you all did, Scooby such a
yeah.
great service in those two movies, and it's just a shame we didn't get to see the third one because, like, you've already
Or the fourth, or the fifth.
Yeah.
We would have done them
6,
forever.
7, 8, 9.
I mean, it was the concept for the third one does sound so interesting, and like some of the characters you've mentioned as well, like H.G. Wells and Daphne's parents. Have you got round to thinking about who you'd like to see filling those roles?
Oh God, no. We never got that far. We never got. We did actually have a production meeting, and because we storyboarded the entire film, because that's what you have to do to budget these things, and we had a big special effects meeting where we went through all that, and Warner Brothers their production people were like stunned at the degree of our organization and the way we planned to execute very difficult things is economically, both in production and in cost, is possible. And that was that was our last hurrah.
So it's a shame that it
The
didn't.
division that was making those closed. The Cartoon Network said someone said to the Cartoon Network, "Wait a second, you're the Cartoon Network. Why are you doing live action?"
Gosh, well, I guess kind of thank you for your time because I realized we're starting to take some up, but I did just have one last question for you, which
Sure.
is, in terms of your incredible collection that you have from over the years, I know we've seen that a big part of that as well includes Scooby Doo. So, is there a piece or a couple of pieces from your Scooby Doo collection that you cherish the most?
Well, I love the things that were created, as Happy Meal toys at Burger King and stuff. I know they're not called Happy Meals at Burger King, that came from the movie, uh, and 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 you know, it's so sad because we were having such a great time, and we'd put together such an incredible team in front of and behind the camera. But I do have I have a number of very nice mystery machines. Um, I have the prototype when they released a DVD collection of the original show that came inside a beautiful mystery machine with Shaggy, beautiful models of Shaggy and Scooby in the front seat, and I have the prototype that they gave me at Warner Brothers, and so that's my favorite mystery machine, and it's displayed on the first page of the Scooby chapter of My Life in Toys.
Hey, that is absolutely incredible. We're definitely going to source that. We've actually found a number of places that actually are going to stock it in the UK. You've got Waterstones and WH Smith. So all of those links I'll put
How
in the
about
description.
but not Forbidden Planet? I hear. I would have thought that would have been a natural.
You know what? We actually only found out about Forbidden Planet literally yesterday. I don't know where it's like how it's avoided us this whole time, but
I'm sorry. Do you mind if I slap you?
it's just crazy. I just couldn't believe it. But I guess from your point of view, in America, like where's the kind of best places for people watching this to purchase My Life and Toys?
My Life in Toys is available on Amazon. It is available on BarnesandNoble.com, Target.com, Walmart.com, GEditions.com, Bookshop.com, local booksellers, those usually smaller, cooler neighborhood places that still exist in the world seem to carry it. And I will say that Amazon has reduced the price by about 20% lately. So it's 480 pages, almost 8.1 pounds, and it is it's almost a foot tall, and you got to be in good shape just to read it. But yes, it is an expensive proposition. However, there's a discount. But basically, you're getting three normal collectible books in one book. So, so it's worth it. It's worth it if you love toys, if you love movies, if you love animation. If you're a collector, you're going to want to see this.
On record, and of course, like without a doubt, everyone watching this today will be a big fan of all of those things. So hopefully, they can do it. And I guess for people watching this, when you go out to buy the book, please let us know like where you got it from and like kind of what you thought about it in the comment section down below. It'd be great to get that kind of conversation going. And for you, is there a good place to kind of keep up with your work, directing or in films?
I have no idea.
Just keep checking in on IMDb and see what's
well,
there.
I'm basically now. I have a project over at Illumination Entertainment who do the Minion movies, a CGI animated musical that I created, and Pharrell Williams is producing it and doing the music, and that's ongoing, and I have like nothing to do with it. It's fine. That's their business. I have nothing. I've never done anything like animation before. Okay. But anyways, it's sour grapes. I can't complain about that. And I teach at both the University of Arizona and the University of New Mexico. And working with the next generation of comedy writers is very satisfying.
That sounds absolutely amazing. It's so amazing to have spoken to you today. Thank you so much for your time. And I guess thank you so much for everyone for watching this today and for keeping up with things and for the feedback. And if you do want to see more things like this, then please like, comment, and subscribe, and find the purchase links for my life and toys in the description down below.